There's a longer video. I thought it seems really good though. Going over a little bit more Israel and Gaza stuff. But then I think we'll do some like John Oliver or something like that. I want to try and keep it a little light. And if you got memes, then do it. Send them to me.
And lawmakers in D.C. respond swiftly to what's happening on the ground in the Middle East, both in terms of the violence and also America's role in the region. I spoke with Senator Chris Murphy. He's on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He penned a letter this weekend calling for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. I spoke with him about the Biden administration's role in the conflict. Senator, the White House issued a readout yesterday of the president's call with Netanyahu, and it said that he, quote, expressed his support for a ceasefire. Did the president wait too long?
Listen, the only way to solve this situation is for there to be a ceasefire. But I think this violence underscores how much work we have to do, how heavily involved the United States is going to have to be in the future of Palestinians and Israelis. Maybe something the Biden administration hadn't planned on spending a lot of time on in their first 4 years, but I think they're going to have to.
We've seen a shift with Democrats in particular in D.C. openly questioning Washington's support of Netanyahu. What do you attribute that to?
I reject the notion that there's been a shift in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has stayed rooted in the
Looks
idea
like the
that there
Biff
should
button
be
works.
a two-state future, that the Palestinians should have a viable future nation. What has shifted is the position of the Israeli government. What shifted over the last 4 years was the position of the United States government. And so Democrats have stayed exactly where we are, which is
Didn't work. Let's try again.
future
Thank you.
Between Palestinians and Israelis has to involve a viable state for the Palestinians. And so, yeah, it's true the Democrats are a little bit more willing to criticize Israel today, but that's not because our position has changed. That's because the position of the Israeli government has changed. And so we're just reflecting the new reality.
So we have colleagues that have been on the ground who have said that Palestinians who are being evicted from their homes are saying that they see no substantive difference between the Trump administration and the current one. Is the rhetoric around this conversation kind of useless if we're still giving the Israelis $735 million with weapons?
Well, the position of the Biden administration is fundamentally different than that of the Trump administration. The Trump administration, for instance, stopped all aid to Palestinian refugees.
They would have done the same thing. Like, this is the same bullshit.
Stopped economic support for Palestinian territories. The Biden administration has reversed.
There's the him saying he was a Zionist, as well as America would have made in Israel. Okay. This is so weird. Yeah, here it is.
If we look at the Middle East, I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made.
This has been going on for a while, though.
It is the best
obviously
$3 billion investment we make. Were there not...
You see, he regrew his hair since then.
In Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
That's what I wanted to hear. Yeah.
You know our first guest tonight from this movie, The King of Staten Island.
Those policies, that's a welcome change in the region. I think it's going to be increasingly important in the coming years for the United States to make sure that there is a future viable Palestinian state. And I think that we're going to have to work with our Israeli partners to make sure that they share that view.
Gaza had a bombing over the weekend that housed a U.S. media organization. Do you feel that was justified? Have you received a briefing on that? Do you want to get a briefing on that at this point?
To me, looks like a major mistake by the Israelis, and I welcome contrary information, but this is part of the reason why we need to get a ceasefire very soon.
That I agree.
Hamas doesn't give a crap
ceasefire.
whether they're hitting military or civilian targets. They are lobbing missiles indiscriminately into Israel. Israel, at least, is trying to make sure that they are hitting military targets. I think they have clearly failed in some cases.
Christian, at the end of the day,
at least he can say that they failed. I don't know if they're indiscriminately just trying to hit military bases, since the only people they've killed have been
and if the U.S. changes its posture towards Israel is in the hands
civilians.
Of the commander-in-chief.
Like 60 of them being children, like were babies. Bring this up again. Isn't that not working right now? That's weird. Oh, there it is. That's what I've already seen some of this. It's pretty crazy.
We're on the grounds of Al-Aqsa. It's one of the holiest places in the Islamic religion. And so we've come here today on one of the holiest nights of Ramadan. The crowds are huge. So if anything happens, it could potentially be very dangerous for the people that are here. It's nighttime prayers for Palestinian Muslims. And this year, Israeli forces showed up unannounced. So you can see that there is Israeli police actually inside, in the grounds of Al-Aqsa. That's what triggered the protests, and that's what triggered the anger today. Palestinians feel like they're being pushed out of East Jerusalem, the city they see as the capital of a future Palestinian state. They say Israel is upping its efforts to redraw the borders of the city, but Israel claims it belongs to them, despite the United Nations saying it's an occupation, illegal under international law. The Israeli police have been arresting loads of Palestinian children. Palestinians are retaliating because so many young men have been taken away by police.
So, just for a reminder, this was at Al-Aqsa, which is a very holy site for Muslims, but as well, it was also built on top of a holy Jewish site as well. Biggest thing that they wanted to do is just go in and worship, as they were saying. And they raided the area.
As Ramadan continued, Palestinians in East Jerusalem faced stun grenades, arrests, and water cannons.
And
some of the worst violence.
Hamas's request, which again, Hamas, but where that don't go in and invade and beat people and let them allow to come in and worship, and don't settle and kick out these people in these homes in this neighborhood, as more and more settlers have been coming over saying that they own the land and kicking people out.
Violence seen in
Palestinian people. And they were taking the children, as well as Gaza is also very largely young people, less adults around.
East Jerusalem is important to Jews, Muslims, and Christians. It's also the site of the sacred Jewish Temple Mount. But most of the people who live in this part of the city are Palestinians. That's been slowly changing since Israel captured the area in 1967 and started moving in settlers. Jewish people now make up around 40% of the population. And in 2018, Israel was emboldened by President Trump, who moved the US embassy into East Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. It outraged Palestinians, but was celebrated by right-wing Israelis.
It is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
At the heart of the fight over East Jerusalem is the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, home mostly to Palestinian families, some who came here in 1956 after being displaced by Israel when the state was created 8 years earlier. Israel claims Jews historically owned this land. Now, there's a lawsuit to forcibly evict some Palestinian residents, making its way through the courts. Protesters have been turning up since the issue reached the Supreme Court this year.
بسنة 67 أول بيت استولت عليه الجماعات الصهيونية بعد الحرب ب5 أشهر بشهر 11 67 استولوا على أول بيت بالحي وهو بيت عائلة الشنطي.
Mona al-Kurd and her relatives are one of 28 families fighting in court to keep their homes.
صدقوني ما حد من أهل الحارة رح يطلع إلا لآخر لحظة يجوا يشحطونا شحن نعيش بيتنا أرضنا.
Other Palestinians have already been replaced by right-wing Israeli settlers.
Hey! Hey! جيبوا رجاء بدناش
ايش صار هسه؟ ايش صار؟
كانوا واقفين شباب وصبايا فلسطينيين وهجم عليهم نزلهم بالعصاي. شوف العصاي اللي بايده. سراقين هدول سراقين حراميه. انا وياهم بنفس البيت.
هم ببيتك؟
هم ببيتي. تعي شوفي. هذا البيت اللي اخذته ستي لانها لاجئه تهجرت بال48 من حيفا. هذا البيت
هذه
بابا بناه بسنه 2000 لانه تزوج وجابنا فصار بده مساحه اكبر. بس بابا انهى بناء البيت وعمرنا ما سكناه. اجى القاضي سكر باب البيت ورجع على المحكمه وامر انه البيت يضله مسكر بحجه انه مبني بدون ترخيص.
منو يعيش بيها؟
مستوطن شباب.
It was built without a permit.
انتوا تعيشون هنا
وهم هون
وهم يعيشون.
They have to respond to Israeli courts too. So
بابا
yeah.
وماما كانوا يشتغلوا حوشوا مصاري وبنوا هذا البيت.
اوكي.
كله من تعبنا وشقانا. وبعدين اصدرت محكمه الاحتلال قرار بانه يجوز للمستوطنين السكن في المنزل. طب ما هذا البيت بدون ترخيص صح وعليه امرين هدم. طب هو بدون ترخيص على اي اساس بتسكنوا مستوطن اسرائيلي فيه وبتمنعوني انا كفلسطينيه اسكن فيه؟ على اي اساس؟ اني ديمقراطيه هاي.
ايش تشعرين لما تشوفي؟
قهر انزعاج يعني مزعج متعب. انا ما ببكي لاني ضعيفه ابدا صدقيني والله. بس ببكي لانه نتعاملش مع دولة عادلة. احتلال وهذه ارضنا. انا انخلقت ربيت وعيت كبرت هون. على اساس في يجي حدا ياخذها كيف؟
Yeah, exactly.
اللي عم بيصير مناهضة
nothing to do
للقوانين
with the
الدولية.
permits as well as we're the people that issue the permits anyways. So Jesus, I thought that was like a fucking knock on my own door.
Hello.
This guy, yeah.
How are you?
This guy was brought up in a viral post as well. This is a guy from, he says Long Island. We were saying he's got like a Brooklyn accent, but Long Island. Brooklyn is on Long Island, but don't tell people from Brooklyn that they're on Long Island. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, this guy's from Long Island. This is so funny.
Yeah.
The Israeli-American
You're
settler.
a difficult man to get hold
Not
of.
funny, sad, but
generally don't interview, but
this is
given the
ridiculous.
circumstances and the bad press that's out there, we decided that we need to do some damage control.
Jacob Fauci
Some of the
is
bad
an American
press out there.
Israeli. He became infamous after Mona confronted him and the video went viral.
This one, yeah.
Jacob, you know this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? Why are you yelling at me? I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No one is allowed to steal it, يا عمي.
He's been living in an additional part of Mona's
If
house.
I'm not gonna steal it, someone else is going to. So I gotta take it. I'm taking back my homeland. Homeland, this isn't Coney Island. You're an American. Fuck off. Yeah.
For over 10 years after being recruited by a US-based company called Nahalat Shimon International, which owns the property under Israeli law.
How did you end up here?
That's his culture.
It's a long story. Basically,
Long
I needed
Island
to move
culture,
from where
man.
I was, and my friend was very, very active in this neighborhood. And he said, you can stay here for the time being.
Do you pay rent?
I have an arrangement with the owners of the house. I don't want to get into personal arrangements and rents and things, but yes, I'm a tenant here. I have no ownership over this property.
You're from Brooklyn?
No, I'm from New York, from Long Island.
From New York. What right do you have to live here?
The right I have is that the owner of the house wants me to live here, And he wants there to be Jews living in his house, and he wants to. And I got chosen for whatever reason. It ended up being me.
So why do you live here?
Because I live here, because it's important, and because not too many people want to live here, and it's important to strengthen this neighborhood, to make sure that this neighborhood is not lost in any future peace deal.
Is not lost in any future peace deal? I didn't catch that before. That's funny. That's an interesting way of thinking about things. You're to strengthen this neighborhood.
This is not their ancestral lands. They have not been here for generations. They came here in 1956 because they had nowhere else to be, and somebody illegally put them here. Whatever they're accusing me of
refugees.
Is no different from what they're doing and what they did.
So your position here is a political position to keep Palestinians out of it?
Not to keep Palestinians out of it, to keep Jews in it.
And therefore keep the Palestinians who were here out of it?
No, that's not, no. That's a necessary evil.
Yeah, exactly. Not too many people live here. No, exactly.
In that viral video, they're not coming back here. This part of the house for sure is lost. The second part of the house, unless there's some major miracle, is going to be lost. And they're not coming back into here. So whether I am here,
they're just importing American colonialism.
I am not here. Whether it's me, whether it's someone else, whether it's a monkey, whether it's a giraffe, they're not coming back into this house ever. I understand why they're angry at me. I understand why they dislike me. But I did not do this to them. I'm not doing this to them. And as I said, if I leave, I'll be replaced immediately. And I venture to think that whoever comes here is not going to be as easygoing as I am.
What the fuck?
Jacobs and Nahalat Shimon International's unyielding stance is being challenged both inside the neighborhood and in court.
I don't understand why they need to be.
Lawyers representing the families
like,
argue
he was just okay with like kicking them out. He's like, if this is the way it needs to be, like, this is not their land. They were just staying here. Like, what?
Under international law to displace anyone from occupied land. They're also arguing that there's a double standard. Israel allows Jews to return to their homeland, but not Palestinians.
It's okay. I don't want to call
yeah, why shouldn't Israel step you in a really kind way?
I want to ask you why you've taken the man.
Nahalat Shimon International did not respond. Nahalat Shimon International.
Listen to them, I'm not.
Okay, it's protesting.
Jacobs and Nahalat Shimon International's unyielding stance is being challenged both inside the neighborhood and in court, where lawyers representing the families argue it's illegal under international law to displace anyone from occupied land.
Yeah, UN says it's illegal, by the way.
They're also arguing that there's a double standard. Israel allows Jews to return to their homeland, but not Palestinians.
It's okay. I don't want to cause a problem. I just want to ask you why. I want to ask you why you've taken the man.
Nahalat Shimon International did not respond to our request for comment. Across the street from Munna's home is a house that belonged to a family pushed out in the last round of evictions. We found Abu Ayman al-Ghawi alone, sitting outside his old house. So you used to live in this house across the road. What happened?
رمونا بين ساعة والتانية للشارع، كسروا الابواب، ضربونا احنا واولادنا ونسواننا، حملونا بالقوة ورمونا برا.
Were you given any help, any money, a place to stay? What sort of support did you get?
يعني هم ما قدموا أي مساعدة، لا بيت لا إيجار. يعني تصوري احنا قعدنا هون تحت هذه الشجرة مقابل بيتنا 7 أشهر.
What happened to all your belongings that were in the house?
أخذوا كل العفش ورموه، احنا بنعرفش وين راح العفش. بقول لك ما طلعنا إلا بالأواعي اللي علينا، بالملابس اللي علينا بس. كنت أنا لابس أواعي النوم. مرتي طلعت بدون بابوج، بدون شحاطة.
How long exactly have you lived in this house?
في سنة 1962 أنا انولدت هون. القدس هذه حقنا إحنا، مش حق المستوطن. المستوطن اللي أجا من أمريكا ولا من روسيا ولا من ألبانيا هو مش أحق مني إنه يعيش هوني. أنا انولدت هون، دمي دموعي في هذا البيت.
Arya King, a right-wing activist who was appointed one of East Jerusalem's deputy mayors last year, says the right belongs to the Jewish people.
When we are Jews in the States, in Australia, in England, in Jerusalem, we are facing to one place, Haram al-Sharif, Temple Mount.
I mean, that's religion.
Of course.
Talking about a religion when you're talking about people and the land and where they live, is it irrelevant?
Absolutely.
So you can't really justify ownership over religion when there are so many different types of Arabs.
Of course not, but I'm just explaining that the way that we see Yerushalayim, it's different way than any other religion. As a Jew, you can live everywhere in the world. You can be the most Orthodox Jew. If you don't live in Yerushalayim, you cannot keep the entire commitment of God.
I think if you're a Jew anywhere else in the world, that you can't keep your commitment to God? Is that what he said? If you're not in Israel?
That is Jewish.
Of course.
Without Arabs.
I want to see Jews, yes.
As the neighborhood waits on the eviction appeal, support for the families is growing. Police are getting more aggressive. As it's getting closer, the smell is getting really, really strong. Oh, you can see everybody just ran inside.
Oh,
because they don't want to be sprayed with that. It smells like
but
sewage.
like this, yeah, I've heard this. They have this thing go around that stinks up the place and makes it smell like sewage. There's stink trucks.
As it's getting closer, the smell is getting really, really strong. Oh, you can see everybody just ran inside because they don't want to be sprayed with that. It smells like sewage.
That's so fucking crazy. No.
One night,
we're going
police
to
even raided
control
a
your
Palestinian
every
resident's
movement.
house.
This is not an
playing
occupation,
loud
by the
music.
way. This is how you beat terrorism, guys. Is by being a ruling class. Treated like dogs by people. What the fuck? Okay, they're closing the door, but still. Jesus. How do they liquefy their ideology and spraying people? Obviously, I'm going to talking about Zionism here and not their religion. Yeah. It's just, let's even go away from just like Zionism, which is a type of nationalism, but like there's multiple different types. Just this nationalist idea of like pure ownership rights of everything. No, I get you thinking.
On another night,
yeah, some family in Israel, not too familiar with the whole conflict, and I've only heard the pro-Palestine sentiment. I contacted them, and they said that the media is misconstruing a lot of things, and that the Palestinians have shot over 2,400 rockets over, and that they are staying in shelters. It seems like both sides are doing bad things. So the big thing is understanding what you're saying by sides here, because no one's defending Hamas, and Hamas does do bad things. And it has been because of that, but Hamas itself was a response made in the 80s from this ongoing conflict, which is to oppress and kick people out of their homes. When we're talking about pro-Palestine, we're not talking about Hamas. But the fact is that they are, we're talking about Palestinians. Now, there was some Hamas people are saying elected, but Palestinians have not been able to vote or make a state under Israeli occupation. There are plenty of great Israelis and Jews that understand this. So this is just a look at the government and what they have been doing. Very similar to what America does. And as you saw, they're importing American colonists, basically, in these people's lives, as we were exploring in this video. Many of the other people that are saying, like, they have to hide from missiles, and that's not good. And Hamas will not care who they hit. But Israel doesn't care more. They have bombed and killed more people by a landslide than any Hamas has. What Hamas has done is also shit and should not be happening. However, it also is kind of a self-report when you shoot missiles at a... No, it is not, actually, because there are Arab Israelis. This has a very steep history. We have some VODs that we went on some of it. There's also some really great other streamers like Aristocracy TV. She's been covering this very well, I think, because she talks a lot about history, and she herself is Jewish as well, but she understands the Palestinian plight as well. And so that's another awesome streamer to look at for that. But I have gone over this as well. This is a very long and dense thing in regards to who owns the land, and that's what it has been. Many of these Israeli nationalist figures do not care if the Arabs are Jewish, as they've also mistreated Ethiopian Jews in Israel. It tends to seem to be more of a race and nationalist stance on race more than anything. Oh, it's okay. Look, this is a very complex thing. I'm learning a lot myself right now, okay? But, like, there's a pure, pretty obvious, like, imbalance in power, as Hamas does get support from, like, Iran, and they make some of their own missiles, but they are radicalized Palestinians after, for decades, have been pushed out of their homes. They've... IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, has gone and destroyed their like wells and controlled their water and electricity. And Israeli courts over time say, no, your house that you might have been born in is not yours. It's ours, and we're going to bring new settlers in from America, Europe, new Jewish people and Israeli immigrants. And that's where this question of like, whose land is this? Palestinians also came in as refugees. And at one point back in the Ottoman Empire, not that the Ottoman Empire was good, but there were Palestinians and Jewish people and Christian people living in the region. It came after this creation of the Israeli state, after land was given, where also Palestinian refugees came in and had been there for a while as well. It is very complex in that, and it's definitely this Israeli nationalism tends to be very fascistic. As many, there have been even Israeli leaders that have said like, oh, I'm fine with fascism or being a fascist. Like the stuff that they do to this underclass and how they can actually control their entire movements within the region. That's why this is such an issue. Not everyone wants to think that they're the bad guy of it, but there's this thought that this is our land, which is what we see in a lot of like nationalist, fascist type of rhetoric. Not everyone is like that in Israel. There's plenty of great people. As they have chuds in America, they have chuds in Israel. And these are the nationalist type, like we have in America as well. Hey, I'm glad that makes sense. Really, seriously. I'm glad that I'm making him come out a little bit.
On another night, police
exactly,
Talorx, and held him for hours.
We all got to be smart about that. And like here, we got to hear both sides, but also understand that this is a totally not a both sides issue, as there's just one group with more power. Just like there's a lot of shit that America does that I can say is grotesque. There's people in Israel doing the same thing. This is a strict, like, we have to look at the government's actions just as we do America's, and divide that and separate it from the people. To an extent, obviously, nationalism is an ideology that spreads. So it's definitely part cultural. Just like it does here in America.
احنا ما بنعرف بس رايحين نشوف اذا هو بمركز الشرطه الرئيسي يعني. انت اللي اعتقلت اخوي الله يبارك لك ويكسر ايديك يا حيوان يا ابن الكلب.
As Ramadan neared its
And
end,
this part is a little religious, where a lot of this started, because Al-Aqsa Mosque is one of the biggest, and this is a cultural part for both Jews and Muslims, because Al-Aqsa Mosque was built on top of what was a Jewish site at one point. So because of rich cultural history between Christians, Muslims, and Jews, this space itself has been very important for many different people. And so there were people, and Aristocracy covers this far better than I do, but like, she has this part where she's talking about how basically people were coming here to pray, but then ultra Zionists came in that also felt like this needed to be reclaimed, and then the IDF came. And so then you have just all these mounting pressures happening in a place like this.
Al-Aqsa Mosque, and Israeli police once again stormed in.
Yeah. That's how the current stuff started, even though this has obviously been an ongoing thing for decades.
We've been outside for a while, they wouldn't let us in. We've now made it into the ground. There are the remnants of stun grenades everywhere. East Jerusalem is at the heart of the Palestine-Israel conflict, and right now, it's exploded. Palestinians are taking refuge inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
While Palestinians barricaded themselves in the mosque, close by, right-wing Israelis, including Arya King, celebrated the day
deputy
Israel
mayor
captured Jerusalem in 1967.
And this is them celebrating Jerusalem Day.
A lot is happening right now. Al-Aqsa, what you call Jerusalem Day, Sheikh Jarrah. Do you think that this is a very delicate moment?
It's a delicate moment like many other moments we have here. And we passed many moments like that, and we will pass this also.
What do you want to see in the end? What would make you happy?
To see the temple built.
And also, by the way, as I've heard from friends, as well as there's been other reports on it, Jerusalem Day is not a good day to be a Muslim person.
Dome of the Rock is the Holy of Holiness. We believe and we trust God and we believe God, so that it will happen.
Wasps have been a huge in this. Yeah, no, for sure. Wasps. White Anglo-Saxon Protestants, obviously more than just religion. Moral of the story, there's so many power dynamics at play. The power is more important than the religion in the big picture. I agree. Especially like what we were talking about with the US's, as well as, like you said, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant or evangelicals, their view of why people need to be in Israel and stuff like that, which is very weird. Because there's a Christian view that once all the Jews are in Israel, then God will do the rapture, as well as like the Jews wouldn't be allowed out. There's this weird, sick aspect of it for evangelicals that a lot of them believe in. I believe it was about 60%.
In retaliation for the storming of Al-Aqsa, Hamas, a Palestinian militant group that governs Gaza, fired on Israel.
And so it does govern Gaza, and that is important to understand. That's because they really haven't also been able to vote in a new like leadership and they're kind of left with not many options and things to go to, because these people are just trying to live. There are also, and this is not me saying Hamas are good, but the charity aspects of Hamas, or more civilian aspects of Hamas, not charity, for like helping people in civil services and stuff. That doesn't mean that it isn't also a militant terrorist group. This is also true.
Including 2 children.
I do pray for Israel. We pray that they can both figure out a peaceful solution and that this violence can end.
One of the most densely populated places on earth. To escape is
and it shouldn't involve
Israel has closed off the crossing into the blockaded strip.
The forceful occupation.
So far, over 200 Palestinians have been killed,
and deaths
children.
Of 61 children and
When
200 people dying.
And the international community is no longer watching. Mana.
This is not being openly anti-Semitic. Actually, in fact, when you kill Muslim people as well, or Arabic people who are also Semites or of Semitic language, I think this is very easily showable that this is about power imbalances and people being hurt. Israelis do deserve to have a place that they can call home. But so do Arab people.
Including at Israel's Supreme Court.
This is nothing about the Israeli people other than nationalistic ideology and an oppressive government. Not the many great Israeli people, like there are many great American people, but that there are also chuds in both. And that's what I am, anti-chud.
In the coming weeks, the courts will make a decision on the cases of 28
Agreed.
families appealing eviction.
As of which, since Israel has as well helped fund Hamas, so should Israel just sit back and take it? They have the right to protect their own people. My guy, my person, Palestine also has, by the way, been pushed into corners, had their water taken from them, had their electricity taken from them, beaten on Jerusalem Day, not allowed to go pray, kicked out of their homes that they were born in. That's what we were talking about.
Left homeless. When you're sat inside there,
Israelis do deserve peace, and so do the people that their government is harming. And American settlers and European settlers who are helping push people out of their homes. So yes, the people that are harassed and treated like dogs should then just take it. How many Arab states are there? How many Jews live in those countries? Yes, 20% of Israel's population is Arab. They got treated as equals there, as they should. So you're saying that they should just go somewhere else, move somewhere else, even though they were born there? As well as it's an important place for Muslim people as well, and Christians, and as it has been, as people live there in peace together at one point in time. I don't think that a Jewish state or an Israeli state, as Israel is secular, should also be at the exclusion and murder of their children and their people and control over their lives. I think that seems a pretty insane take to have. Israel that defends their landmarks of each faith. It's Hamas that hide it in hospitals and schools. So far, we have not seen any hiding it in Hamas in their schools or proof of, since they won't even give it to us. As well, after Vosh earned $250,000 for the Palestine Child Relief Fund the same day that they decided to bomb that too, and that this charity that has no connections to any violent groups, yeah, the one that, helps children, that was such a nice precision strike. As they do that and get rid of news orgs as well. This is not support of Hamas. Don't even try. That's such bad faith. It's ridiculous. That is not Hamas. This is the Palestinian people that we were talking about. Yes, let's destroy their charity headquarters for children. Let's go destroy news organizations and just say it's because of Hamas. Even though we won't show you any proof of it. And our own presidential admin can't even acknowledge if they did see any proof. How many Jews are on the courts of any Arab nations? How many Jews hold high? There are, and yet, just like here, just because you have a woman on the Supreme Court, or just because you have some person that you're trying to put into the courts here to appear woke, doesn't mean that they have power. You asked for proof, yet you believe Hamas victims' numbers. No, actually, the estimate numbers that I was talking about were from, in fact, IDF, who they show very conservative estimates, and it's bad still. But okay, it's fine. We get it. You just want these people to die. It's okay. We got it. Pretty sad that we talk peace here, and your feeling is that peace means that we need to kill all of them. In a Republican, we need to flame. Funny, why did the Palestinian people elect Hamas? Because they actually have not been able to elect anyone for 6 years. Maybe also because they were continuing, again, having their water taken from them, stolen from them, electricity, kicked out of their homes. And then you wonder, why are they going to hurt me after we've been abusing them for decades? Yeah, because people got radicalized. You know, Hamas was after Israel started doing all of this stuff, right? Also, hi, Mick Broseph. Yeah.
10 years.
Also, why are IDF killing mostly kids? Like, what's up with that, you know?
To being recruited by a US-based company called
that aid was really helpful after they killed 200 people. You're right.
Israeli law.
How did you end up here?
It's a long story.
Basically, cool with children getting cool. Yeah, killed. But yeah. No, it's something else, man. It's pretty impressive types of hoops that you're trying to go to here to justify genocide. Killing mostly kids. God, you leftists are okay. Take a week. You're sipping a lot of Kool-Aid. Why is it not going through? Hold on here. Did you, yeah, you just got them? Give them a week. That's what I was trying to do. True, only care about the unborn. It is true. All right, let's see what else here. We might go over some fun stuff here in a second too. Just had to do that, didn't they?
אני בא עכשיו מהבור בקריה, לחמ"ל המבצעים של צה"ל. זה מרשים ביותר. כל יום שעובר, אנחנו פוגעים בעוד יכולות של ארגוני הטרור.
More of the terrorist organization facilities.
מפעילים עוד מגדלי טרור, פוגעים בעוד מצבורי נשק. כפי
שאמרתי,
שנאספו כאן, זו הזכות הטבעית של ישראל. אני הערכתי מאוד את התמיכה של הממשלות האלה, ואני מעריך...
Yeah, also thank you, Andy. I was trying to get him, but for some reason it was acting funny on me.
בזכות ההגנה העצמית של מדינת ישראל. אני נחוש להמשיך במבצע הזה עד שיושג היעד שלו להחזיר את השקט והביטחון לכם, אזרחי ישראל.
All right. But yeah, Vosh earned 250K yesterday for the PCRF. There was a connection to one group that had a connection to Hamas, I think, but they have not. I know the reason why Vosh use them as he said that they were the ones that the White House actually endorses, which the White House is very pro-Israel. But he got $250K for them to donate over this 24-hour stream, which was really amazing. But yeah, unfortunately, it also got bombed. You know, through that precision strike. Get rid of the Child's Relief Fund. God damn, dude. What the fuck? Fetal cells to develop vaccine.